in Black baseball history. How's everybody doing? Hopefully, you're doing wonderful and having an outstanding evening. And so, I'm coming to you a little later tonight, especially if you're out on the East Coast. Hopefully, some of the people on the West Coast, this might be a pretty good time for you because it's 9:13 here in the Midwest, so that would put them at 7:13. So hopefully, some of the guys from the West Coast can pick me up and catch this broadcast. So as you know, I was on yesterday live, and I had a question. I said, if you can tell me what did not belong in this picture, that I would give you something from the Negro Leagues, and I was going to give away a panoramic, but no one guessed it. And here's what you do: if you go back and you look at that particular broadcast, I had on a black shirt. If you look right here on that black shirt, you'll see that I had a black sock hanging over my shoulder. And I was hoping that maybe people could see that. And but people were looking at the background, and somebody said the Babe Ruth picture didn't belong there. Because the question was, what doesn't belong in this picture? And of course, a sock hanging over your shoulder, same color as your shirt, doesn't belong there. But it was black, just like my shirt, and it just blended in, so nobody saw it. So it's just amazing. But we just have a little fun here all the time. That's what we do here. And of course, today is March the 29th, and this is the March 29th edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. I'm going to drink here, kind of clear my throat a little bit. So I do want to show you this. I was at a party last night, and someone gave me this picture here. I don't know if you can see it real good, but this is the 1934 Thatcher's Colts, Colts, Colts. And they played in the Wichita National Tournament. And Fred Langford, who was a mentor of mine, gave me information about the team. He was the manager of the team. And so I was happy to get that picture. Now, there is also a photograph of that team in my book called The Dizzy and Daffy Dean Barnstorming Tour, Race, Media, and America's National Pastime. And so, but it's a different version of this same team. And you can't really see it good here, but I would tell you one thing Fred told me. If you see, they have like a KC on their uniform, and it just so happens that the Kansas City Blues, who were the American Association team, they bought their old uniforms. And so these are actually Kansas City Blues uniforms. So Fred Langford told me that, man, Fred's probably been deceased since probably the late 80s, early 90s, maybe 1990. So we're giving you a little history. My throat's kind of scratchy. I just came in from doing some walking. So are you ready for me to go ahead and give you some history? Okay, now here's the rules. Remember, I'm going for at least 733 subscribers. And remember, that's the Hank Aaron number, because 733 is the number of home runs he hit in the National League. Now, once we reach 733, and we're not far from it, I think earlier today I checked and I was at 728. So you only need just a handful to get me there. So that's Hank Aaron's number. And then we're going to go for the next number, which is also Hank Aaron's number. It's a 755 number. So that is the total number of his career home runs in the National and the American League. As you know, he finished up with the Milwaukee Brewers his last year. So are you ready, guys? Somebody said hi or hello there, and let me know where you're joining from. That's always interesting. And people who've never seen my broadcast before, they don't know what to expect. But I give you a little history about this day in Black baseball history, but I give you information surrounding that event as well. So, and this first one, I'm going to love to talk about this one. How about we're going to go back to 1901. And it said, John McGraw's wonderful Native American infielder turned out to be an African American after all, from Cincinnati, named Charlie Grant. So McGraw was trying to sign this guy who was a Native American. He wasn't a Native American. He looked like he was a Native American. What he thought was a Native American turned out to be Charlie Grant, the great African American second baseman. And so Grant had played mostly with the Patriots, Giants, out of Michigan, Adrian, Michigan. He also played with the Chicago Columbia Giants in 1899. They had a wonderful team. So he was with them. So for 4 days, McGraw was walking around telling all his friends what a rare find he had found in this Native American ball player. And according to the manager of the Orioles, which McGraw was the manager of Orioles, he had in Tokahama, so he's calling Charlie Tokahama, a diamond artist vastly more skilled than the famous Indian player Soxalexis of the Cleveland team. Of course, the reason they ended up calling Cleveland the Indians was reportedly because of this great ball player was there, Soxalexis. So, and according to the original story, this is how it all came about. McGraw, okay, then the manager of the Baltimore team, the Orioles, was batting grounders to Clark Griffith. Now, you probably heard of Clark Griffith because he owned later the Washington Senators in front of the Hot Springs, Arkansas hotel. And they were down there taking a little spring training. The guys used to go down there and take those baths because they felt like they were therapeutic, and they washed out a lot of the liquor and stuff they had been consuming all winter. So they were down there. And anyway, one of the balls got away from Clark. So the ball spun over the side directly at an approaching pedestrian, according to the story, who scooped up and gathered it in with the ease of a veteran. And McGraw jokingly remarked that he seems to know how to play. And Grant reportedly said, of course I can play. I can skin a whole lot of those professionals in this game. And so now McGraw, he's got McGraw's interest. So McGraw said, well, let me hit you a few. So McGraw started batting him a few, and this strange pedestrian there, who was Charlie Grant, was gathering in some of the hottest ones he could hit down the line. And he threw them back to him, and man, McGraw was impressed. And so McGraw's looking at this guy, and he had this skin. He wasn't dark, and they called it copper-colored skin. And so he asked him, are you Indian? And Charlie Grant said, yeah, I'm an Indian. And he said, I'm from a reservation over the line. And so McGraw said, okay, I've seen enough. And he signed him up right on the spot. And because the guy, he was adept at hitting and fielding. So anyway, it turns out that Charlie Grant was discovered before he ever played a major league game. And the question that the newspaper mentioned, they said, what will McGraw do now that he knows he has signed a colored man? Okay. And the newspaper said, it will be interesting. Well, I can tell you how interesting it was. He just dropped him. And guess what? So they had an Indian playing for Cleveland who was not as good as Charlie Grant. That's why, guys, every time I talk about when we merge those statistics, and I was part of that, this is something that needed to happen because there were so many outstanding black players who were better than the guys that were in the league, and they were calling it the major leagues when, hey, was it really a major league? That's something that you can debate with me all day long. But I can tell you, they called it a major league, and they still call it a major league today. And so they've been doing that for over 100 years. But there were actually ball players outside of the league all over the place who could not get into the league simply because they were African American. So, guys, I'm just telling you the story. So this is a story that goes back to 1901. Charlie Tokahama, who was really Charlie Grant. And Grant was from Cincinnati. Of course, he passed away in Cincinnati. And I've done some work on Charlie Grant. He was with the 1905 Philadelphia Giants, and I'm revising my book on that team right now. And so I'm all into Charlie Grant and his past. And I was the one, most people don't talk about Charlie Grant's marriage, but he was also interracially married. So he had married a white lady in 1905, and that's in my book. So if you go back and people are always looking at my work and reciting pieces, but I'm always digging. All right. So let's go to another one. How about let's go to March 29th, 1908. You may find this one interesting as well. And of According to the newspaper, a new team will be seen around Chicago in 1908 called the Chicago Giants. Now, if you know anything about Ruth Foster and Frank Leland, after the 1909 season, they they split up the Chicago Leland Giants, and Frank Leland took over and organized a new team called the Chicago Giants. But this is 1908, so this is a year before all of that happened. So here we go. So Dave Wyatt is organizing this team, and Dave Wyatt turned out to be just a great writer, good friend of Ruth Foster. And if you want to know more about Ruth Foster's early beginnings, then you needed to read Dave Wyatt. So anyway, Dave White is putting his team together, and so he's already got a few players in line that he would like to have on this team, and some of them had already signed up. So, and they were trying to get in this new league that they were organizing, which never came to be. But in March of 1908, it was still a possibility that it could happen, but it didn't. So anyway, he had already reached out to Harry Griffin. He was a pitcher in Indianapolis. William Prim, he was also with Indianapolis, and Frank Gordon, a catcher. And he had John Marita. John Marita. There's pictures of John Marita making the circuit around, and he was with St. Louis. And a guy named Clarence Howell, Howell, and those were two infielders, and that would be Marita and Howell. And Howell was from Kansas City, and they were said to be with Wyatt in this enterprise. And so as the years go past, Marita ends up showing up in Kansas City, okay, and from St. Louis. And then, of course, I don't know much about Howell. And being in Kansas City, you would think that I would, but I've never seen his name appear much. So I get the feeling that Clarence Howell was actually from somewhere else, not Kansas City. All right, maybe you've traveled through Kansas City or something like this, but I can tell you this: Dave Wyatt knew him, and so that was an effort that was kicking off in 1908, March 29th, 1908, that actually never came to be. But some of those players, especially Griffin, he turned out to be a great pitcher, and so did Prim. All right, so all right then, so let's go over to another one, March 29th, 1910. Now, is this interesting to you guys? Just let me know. I got people bouncing in and out and giving a thumb up. And I know, guys, if you come online, it's hard to stay for 15, 20 minutes. I think a lot of people are just looking for something interesting and they're bouncing around. And so, but some people stumble into me. So if you like what I'm doing here, by all means, subscribe. And if you really like it, guys, share the broadcast, especially if you're a baseball fan, because I talk baseball, pure baseball, but I'm not the one who's going to give you a statistic like somebody batted 315 in 1942 or something. I'm not that kind of guy. I could do that, but most people want to hear other things, especially if you can relate them to their community or to their life as of today. So, all right, so let's go to another one. How about this? March 29th, 1910, Harvard University's Clarence Billy Matthews, and this guy played football and baseball. He was a star player. He signs on with a guy named Larson, who was organizing a newly formed United States Baseball League. Yeah, and he got a lot of people involved with this league. I wrote about that in my book, A Harvest on Freedom's Fields. And I talk about, I go in detail on this league and Lawson, who he was. Now, Lawson was a white guy, and he decided that he wanted to bring black players into his league. And so he wanted to have an integrated professional league. Now that's a revolutionary idea if he kind of pulled it off. But he put his teams in cities like Philadelphia and New York that already had teams, and he instantly began to struggle because his was the newest kid on the block. And he didn't get some of the premier black players, but he did get Clarence Matthews to sign up. And Matthews never took the field in the league game, and because it was grossly grossly underfunded. We're talking about the league, of course. The whole league disbanded. So that was Clarence Matthews. Let me tell you what I know about Clarence Matthews. He was at Harvard in 1905. Now it just so happens that I had a cousin that was his classmate in 1905. How about that? And that was my cousin, uh, Bruce. Bruce was his last name, Conklin Bruce. So he was a classmate with Clarence Matthews. How about that? And so there were black people at Harvard in 1905. So my cousin name was Roscoe Conklin Bruce. I might as well give you the full name. So he was there at the same time. And I'm pretty sure he might have knew Clarence Matthews because it couldn't have been that many guys on campus. But just know, guys, that some of this history I talk about, I'm really involved in it because it connects to my history, right? And so, and another reason why I give names of ball players and from different towns and cities all over the country. Some of them you've never heard, some of you will never hear of again unless somebody like myself talks about them. It's because these people were a part of somebody's family history. And so I love talking about all these. And sometimes people don't know their family history, but when you hear these names and I write about these names in books and things like that, it helps them to live beyond this day, right? Okay, so Clarence Matthews, of course, Clarence Matthews goes on to be actually a lead attorney for Marcus Garvey when he was doing the Back to Africa movement. Did you know that? So this guy was playing football and baseball at Harvard at a very high level, was also there. And then let's see, I'm trying to think. I think in my book, yeah, A Harvest on Freedom's Fields, I do have a picture of Clarence Matthews when he was coaching at the Noble Greenup School, and that was in Massachusetts. And years ago, I went to Noble Greenup to speak. I was there. Buck O'Neill spoke also, so we spoke on the same day. And so I was kind of like Buck's warm-up speaker because I knew Buck's whole speech, so I could be a warm-up speaker. So I gave my little spiel, and then Buck came behind me, and he finished it off and did a great job. But they gave me a tour of the school, so I'm walking around and looking at all these kind of historic footballs they had going from the turn of the century. You know, they had the like things written on the footballs, champion 1902, 1907. And so I walked past a picture and I noticed a black guy on the picture. And I said, I didn't know Clarence Matthews coached here. And the guy looked at me, he said, you know who that is? We've been trying to figure out who that is for years. I said, oh yeah, that's Clarence Matthews. Just by visually seeing the picture, I knew it was Clarence Matthews. And that amazed them. I think at that time, I was in my 30s probably. And man, that's been 30 years ago. So I was able to identify someone just simply by looking at the picture. And of course, I went back and did some research, and they pulled some old manuals, some old yearbooks, what they call them. And sure enough, he was the coach, and so I was able to verify it. And of course, through newspaper articles, I went and did some research and sent it to them, so they do know that Clarence Matthews was there. So Clarence Matthews, that's a name that gets talked about sometimes, but never enough. So if you go online and say Google Clarence Matthews, you can find some more information. All right. So let's go to, how about this one? Here's a guy I knew I interviewed. I used to go to his house all the time. So on March 29th, 1918, Allen Lefty Bryan, a pitcher for the Kansas City Monarchs, was born in Chicago, Illinois. Now, Bryan, I used to visit him all the time. Now, I'll tell you an interesting thing, like Charlie Grant, Bryan was also interracially married, right? And so he lived off of, what is that, Gregory here in Kansas City, Missouri, and I would go by his house and I talk to him all the time, and I try to put him on the map as far as a ball player. And of course, when we organized the Negro Leagues Museum, and I'm a co-founder of the Negro Leagues Museum, Bryan got an opportunity to go places and sign autographs. So there are people around Kansas City who have Lefty Bryan autographs, and sometimes people will call me and say, who is Lefty Bryan? You know, or they'll have his autograph. They just don't know anything about him. But yeah, Lefty Bryan. He was a pitcher and pretty good pitcher as well. And he played for the Kansas City Monarchs. And so happened to interview him and knew him very well and went to his house on many occasions. All right. So I'm giving you some information. You know, when I say this guy lived off of Gregory, you can bank on that. All right. And if I tell you once again about Fred Langford, you can bank on that because this picture, he showed me this picture at his house over 40 years ago. It was I might have been pulling up on, man, it might have been like 19, maybe 83, 84, something like that. I used to go visit Fred Langford. He was 94 years old at that time. And uh, these are people that have been a part of my life all my life. And I've been talking about them and keeping their history alive just as long as I can. All right. So, guys, now, once again, if you like what I'm doing here, by all means, subscribe. Get me to that 733. That's the Hank Aaron National League home run record number, right? He had 733 home runs in the National League. And I happen to know Hank Aaron, good guy, supported me in this research. And I have an autographed picture. Every once in a while, I'll put it up. All right, so this is the last one I'm going to give you. And then I'm also going to, before I give you this last little anecdote, or this historic figure that occurred on this day, I do want to let you know, if you go back and look at two things I posted earlier today. I went down to where Riverside Park was, and that's where the Kansas City, Kansas Giants played. So you can go back and listen to that video. And then also, where did I go? Yeah, and I interviewed a guy who played for the Indianapolis Clowns in 1977. And it's amazing that the Clowns were still out there in 1977, and he played for the Clowns, and he was in Kansas City. I met him in Cleveland, and so he was coming through here. And I always tell people, if you follow me and you meet me, if you ever come to Kansas City, if I'm available, I'll come down and meet you. So I went down and met him and his wife down. And so we were able to talk about the Negro Leagues, and I did a great interview with him. So you might want to check this interview out. I think you'll find it very entertaining. He was a very entertaining, colorful guy to talk to, had great history about the Indianapolis team and how he got connected to the team. So those are two videos that are out there that you can go and even if you can't watch the whole thing, go out and hit a like, guys. That'll help put it in the algorithm, right? Get it out there. Because I'm trying to get the word out, because this is a community that I'm building. It's a community, guys. All right. So here's my last one for today. And this goes back to March 29th, 1979. I remember this happening very well. A Mississippi born Lucius Luke Easter is murdered at age 63 in Euclid, Ohio. And at that particular time, man, I was maybe about 21, 20, 22 years old at that time. I'm trying to do the math in my head. But I remember that story. And he was actually helping a friend out and making a bank deposit because they were couriers for different banks, and someone tried to rob him and killed him. And Luke Easter was just a tremendous ball player. And you can pick up his cards, uh, especially in the top sets. I don't know. He might be in a few Bowman sets too from the late 40s and the early 50s. And he was just a outstanding individual, and just gone too soon. And I talked to his grandson. He's up there around the Seattle area. So I need to give him a call back. I haven't talked to him recently. But yeah, Luke Easter, and he was born, let's see, where's he born? I think I said it, Euclid, Ohio. But he was raised in St. Louis, Illinois. And Normal Tweed Webb used to tell me great stories about Luke Easter. Of course, Luke Easter would go on to hit 93 home runs in the American League, and then they farmed him out, and he went to various minor league teams. Ended up with another 269 home runs in minor league, right? So if you go back, and he was playing as early as 1938 in St. Louis, and he had a lot of home runs in St. Louis just to get signed up for the Cleveland Indians. So I'd be willing to bet you that this guy hit over 400 home runs, and we don't even talk about it. Not enough. And so anyway, that was him. And let's see. Oh, wait a minute. I can't let this one get away from me. All right. So I said I was going to wrap it up, but see, we'll do this one in less than a minute. Okay. So we got March 29th, 1967. Man, I was collecting baseball cards. I almost completed the 1967 set in 67, right? So this guy was born. So a guy named Brian O'Neill. And Brian O'Neill Jordan is his full name. is born in Baltimore, Maryland. Man, at the same time, Orioles were pretty good in 67. Okay, and this guy was a two-sport athlete, played baseball and football. And this is a modern day two-sport guy. In 1,456 major league games, he collected 1,454 hits, right? So he almost had two less hits than games played, right? and and so he finished with a lifetime batting average of 283. And then he went on to play 3 seasons in the NFL. And he snagged down 5 interceptions for the Atlanta Falcons. Have you ever heard of Brian? Brian Jordan. Okay, so that does it for me tonight. Just happy to mention all these people. And if you're looking at the things we covered tonight, we talked about Charlie Grant, Chief Tokuhama, and we went from Hot Springs, Arkansas, and then we bounced over to Chicago. Then we bounced over up to Harvard University with Billy Matthews. Then back to Kansas City with Alan Lefty Bryan. And then we jumped over to let's say Euclid and also St. Louis with Luke Easter. And we finished up with the guy by the name of Brian O'Neill Jordan, okay? And he was born on this date in Baltimore, Maryland, March 29th, 1967. So that does it for me, and this has been another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History with Phil S. Dixon. And guys, don't forget to pick up my latest book if you hadn't gotten it here, The 1910 Chicago Leland Giants. 400 pages, guys. It's a page turner, and it's an award-winning book, Best of Illinois award-winning and book, and a good one. A good one. I'm quite proud of that work, and it really says a lot about what I really feel about the game and what I feel about some of these great players who are not getting the recognition because I bring them to you in a way that you typically won't find in other places. So thank you, guys. It's been my pleasure, and I will see you real soon. This is Phil Dixon signing out for now, and go back and check my videos out, guys. Check those out, all right? You have a nice day. Bye.